Well, hello there. This is Vitriol's Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Welcome to another episode of Quick Wins, number 99. Today, I've got a really interesting game of the Englund Gambit Accepted, one of my favourite lines against the Queen's Pawn opening, where it really demonstrates the importance of reading your opponent's intentions, seeing their mistakes, and responding to them. So you could just play down, opening principles, but it's really important that when you see a mistake, when you see an opportunity, if you want a quick win, you have to act and you have to take advantage. Let's go take a look. So I've got the black pieces, of course. It's going to be a Queen's Pawn opening game. So a d4, my opponent, a Random Noob. This was an unrated game of 10-minute rapid, man of culture, Queen's Pawn opening, and of course the very combative e5 Englund Gambit captures, and as usual with the King Englund Gambit Accepted, a knight to c6, immediately putting pressure. Now here the best move for white is to develop their own knight. So knight to f3 defends the pawn, but after queen e7 we're moving towards the Englund Complex. Now, one of the semi-common moves, not super rare, but also not terribly common, is where white opts to defend the pawn with f4. Now, at high depth, Stockfish does not call this a mistake. It's kind of okay. It's about plus 0.2, plus 0.1, somewhere around there. So white is technically all right. However, I think it's kind of a tactical mistake when played by humans. And that's because white has very early moved the f-pawn, and it now significantly weakens that dark square diagonal to white's king along that f2 square. Let's keep an eye on that diagonal. That becomes something that we attack. And I saw this right away, and I knew that this is where I needed to attack, so I decided to develop the bishop. Now here, they develop the knight, very sensible, so putting the knight behind that pawn. And here, the critical move in this position, d6. In this position, you can see white is notionally ahead. But when you look at the Lead Chess Community database, I think this position's been reached about 50,000, 51,000 times before. Who's more likely to win? Black is much more likely to win in this position. They capture, and here a potential move to play that allows for a very tricky line is to ignore that pawn and just develop this way. You could also potentially develop this way as well, but a knight to f6 is the best move. It's the most principled move, and here if white gets greedy and takes like this, that's a blunder, because now we've got bishop to f2, again making use of that weak dark square diagonal. King is trapped, has no escape squares because the d file is fully covered by my queen. Queens look at each other. King forced to capture the bishop as the only legal move. Queen flies across the board. We win the queen. Basically, we win the game. So there is that trap in this line. Now, in this game, however, I opted not to do that. I actually forgot about this trap when I was playing. I was just blitzing these moves out. I captured with the bishop, which is still okay. So Stockfish didn't like this, causes a mistake. White is kind of ahead. It's like they've got that full point of that gambit pawn advantage. But here, my view was along that dark square diagonal. Let's see what we can do. All right. They now immediately justify that move. You can see black is ahead again with h3. And here, these are the dark squares here. So these are the dark squares here. And you will notice that at this point, white has critically weakened all these squares, with the possible exception of h4, which is still defended by the knight. But the g3 square and the f2 square are now no longer defended. If this pawn magically disappeared and we could get our bishop to g3, that is mate. So here, let's think about possible traps. And this was what I was thinking. There is a potential for g5. They could capture here, but they could potentially sort of capture this way as well, which doesn't really work because at the moment we want that pawn to move. So here, let's just play principled moves. Knight to f6, also thinking of the potential. Could we potentially sacrifice that knight to get rid of that pawn? So that's something to think about. Now, white here again justified my position. They played g4. And here I thought for almost a minute. And the thing is, here we know that there's that very weak dark square diagonal. But what was the intention for white to play g4? We already know that white is probably not sensitized to this weakness here. Otherwise, they wouldn't have played some of these moves. But firstly here, and now here, they play this as well. What are they trying to do? They are trying to play a kingside pawn push, kingside expansion, and they're going to try to attack my knight, to just dislodge that knight. And if that's what they're going to be doing, one of the things that I can do is to potentially make use of their reasoning. So they're thinking that they want to push the pawn to g5. So I play g5. Very tricky move. Basically, for white, it looks like that they've made that move, that it's potentially sort of sensible. It's sensible for me because I'm trying to stop their advance. That's what they're thinking. But they're also going to see, but wait, I can capture this way, and I'm going to put pressure on black's knight, which is what they wanted to do. Here, before they could capture this way, that might even make more sense, but now there's sort of a logic for them to take with the pawn. So here, I push that move, a g5, tricky move. White didn't see the trap, and almost immediately they blitzed out. F captures a g5, it's a blunder, because bishop now to g3, and it's mate. Good game, GG.